Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! This is not my story. It was posted on a web board in my native language, and I think it would fit here. OP has a real estate business, often buying land or an old house, then improving and selling it. Occasionally, she lease a place, improve, and then sublease it. She found an old shabby house, but at a great location online, so she contacted the agent and offered to buy it, but the agent said the owner only wanted to lease it. They agreed to make a lease contract that has to be renewed every 3 years and negotiate a date to sign it. However, OP has to go abroad for some time before they will be able to meet and sign a contract. So agents ask for a deposit for about $1,800, and OP agrees. One day after the deposit was transferred, the agent deleted all her posts on the website, blocked OP's number, and left the chat in line. Similar to WhatsApp, OP collects old chat logs and transfers paper, then goes to the police. They said they cannot do anything since it's a civil case despite OP's protest that this is fraud, hence a criminal case. Without the police's paper, OP cannot go to the bank and has that agent's account suspended. Instead, she consulted a law firm, which also had a private investigation service. For about $75, the investigator gave OP the agent's real phone number, legal address, her license plate, the company name and address which she works for, list of her relatives and their phone number, and also their address. And the lawyer at the firm wrote a letter stating that OP is going to sue her for a criminal case and send it to her legal address. OP then spends another $150 to hire an investigator to find where she actually lives and keep an eye on her for information such as who she lives with and her daily routine. After finding out that she only lives on her own, OP went to her house to confront her and ask for the money back. She said she doesn't have it now and will transfer it back later. OP proceeds to tell her that in that case, she, OP, wants her agent to contact her agent's boss to guarantee that OP will get her money back. She refused to let anyone at the company know about this. Instead, she transferred $900 back to OP via mobile phone at that moment and said she will transfer the rest at the end of the month. OP said that is unacceptable and that she will contact her parents, then show the information she has on her. The agent was beyond shocked and told OP that her parents had mentioned the letter from the law firm, but they didn't open it. The agent then begins to weep and cry and beg for her mercy and promise for her money at the end of the month. OP agrees and said she changed her number and asked for her agent's phone so OP could save her OP number into her agent's phone. When the agent hands OP the phone, it was iPhone, OP said she will keep it and only give it back when she gets the money at the end of the month. Also, the remaining balance is not $900, but $1,125, for she has to hire a private investigator to get to her. However, she gives her back her SIM card. OP said if she goes to the police about the phone or she does not receive the money, she will contact her company and her parents, then take her to criminal court. At the end of the month, OP received the money, but she contacted her company anyway to make sure she could not find a job in real estate anymore. The agent calls OP and berates her for her dishonesty. She did everything she was told to do, but OP still contacts the company. OP said to her that honesty is not for a thief. P.S. About the contact parents part, in my country we care a lot about how our parents think of us. Yes, we're agents. For those who wonder why police do nothing, we have a saying, everything here is sacred except the law. Wife and I were sitting on our stoop and hanging with a kitten outside after a long day at work, 8 p.m. Kitty is playing in the snow nearby at the edge of our driveway which connects to the road. And out of nowhere, a Ford pickup speeds by and swerves into our driveway, narrowly missing a very scared kitty. Skinny younger guy jumps out of the driver's side and urgently walks toward the stoop, his back to the road, and starts to fiddle with his clothes. No way, man. He hasn't seen us sitting there, dark outside. So I shout, hoping he won't whip it out right there and piss at us. I think he may be a friend of our neighbors at first. They are pretty trashy. I say, "Hey man, who are you? You need to slow down." "Oh hey." He continues to unzip and is spurting dripples of urine in our direction. I notice he's swaying awkwardly, probably drunk I think. "Look man, kids live here and you can't just do that. Now get out before I call the cops." "Ah good, call them, I don't care." My wife says, "Fine, I don't have anything better to do at the moment." My wife dials an emergency number to the station less than 100 yards down the road and puts it on speaker so the a-hole can hear we aren't bluffing. Somehow after a virtual eternity, dude is finally wrapping up. On the phone, my wife tells the police some guy spit into our driveway, barely missing our kitten, and is exposing himself while probably drunk. "Okay, good. Tell him my plate number is XXXX. The wrong plate number. He slurs and stands there defiantly with belt open. I walk a few steps so I can see his real plate number and read it aloud to my wife. At this point, the guy seems to slowly realize this is really happening, and with his pants unbuckled, he waddles quickly back to the driver's side and peels off down the road, swerving in the snow. My wife is still speaking to the police operator when a bad A police charger absolutely roars by in what we assume is in response to our call. She ends the call and we resume our night and kinda chuckle it off while reassuring the little kitten. The next day we called back to see if anything came of it in the end, and turns out they got him just down the road. DUI, underage possession of alcohol, indecent exposure in a school zone, and reckless driving. We got all the audio on our front door camera and forwarded it to the officer in charge. They say it may help tack more charges on and will strengthen others. Good luck, a-hole, with no license, many fines, and is a registered sex offender for life. Moral is, if someone warns you to move along, you better do it. Also, don't drive drunk, people. Okay, so this isn't a story about me. This is about my neighbor. This is exactly how he told me this story, and I witnessed portions of it for myself. Backstory. My neighbor, who we will call David, not his real name, and my other neighbor, who we will call Karen, not her real name, often got into arguments about who owns what part of the property. They live right next to each other, so this is understandable. Karen was known for being a Karen, so this explains a lot. Karen had just gotten engaged with her boyfriend, who we will call Kyle, not his real name, who went over to her house a lot, like every other day, and would spend the night there. We saw his car parked there a lot. Kyle will park his car in front of David's lawn because Karen is part of a large family, so they have many cars. Therefore, there is no room in the driveway. David got a new camper recently. One of those massive ones that are practically buses. They needed a place to park it because they didn't feel comfortable leaving it in a public place, but Kyle's car was there. Around this same time, news was spreading around my neighborhood that Kyle and Karen had gotten married. Kyle moved in with Karen and started using the front of David's lawn as his assigned parking spot. He was told that it was part of her property because Karen was a dummy-dumb and didn't understand that property lines exist. There was an incident in the past with a bench and another with a few trees. Eventually, David got tired of Kyle parking where they wanted to park their camper. He had been having to park it down the road in the public camper places or whatever they are called. He began plotting his revenge. His plan was to park the camper in front of Kyle's car so that he would have to pull out backwards. This way, he would have to struggle to get his car out between one of Karen's siblings' cars and the camper. When this plan happened, Kyle came running up to David's door and began shouting the usual, "I'm calling the cops," and whatnot. When David didn't answer, he tried to inch his way out. He ended up bumping into the car behind him and putting a good-sized dent in it. He instantly ran up to Karen's sibling and began apologizing and blamed it on David. Now, Karen's entire family was mad at David. David said he saw this through the window and was laughing hysterically. Karen actually managed to think logically for once and blamed it on Kyle, but it was okay and insurance will cover it or something like that. Kyle began going off on Karen about how insurance would charge him for the damage. So they ended up fighting about insurance or whatever. This whole thing unraveled outside David's house, so he listened in through the open window. They then came up to his house. David answered the door and all of them but Karen instantly started going off about how he caused the dent in Karen's sibling's car. He said that Kyle's car was parked on his property and that he needed to park his camper somewhere. He dug out the property line drawing or whatever and showed them all. Karen was pissed. Karen said that he had drawn those lines himself and that the actual lines were farther to the left, giving her more property and expanding past where Kyle was parked. Keep in mind, Kyle was parked by the windows of David's house, clearly on David's property. At this point, I could hear yelling from a few houses down and walked over to listen for that sweet, sweet internet karma. Karen ended up calling the cops because David was disturbing the entire neighborhood. 2 cops showed up in a car and instantly sided with Dave after reviewing the property lines. Karen was fined over $700 for misusing 911. Kyle ended up having to pay $900 for the damages done to the other car. Apparently, he broke part of the engine or something. That's not all. Karen and Kyle ended up divorcing because Karen lied to him and said he was on her property, and Karen saying that it was her house so she could lie if she wanted and other things of the sort. Edit, I live on a private road on a small lake. I see all in the comments saying David Ant owns a road, but he does to a certain extent. Also, I think it was a radiator or the gearbox that was damaged when Kyle apparently slammed the gas in reverse out of rage. Back in my college days, several friends and I went to Lake Havasu, Arizona for spring break. Those of you who have been probably hung around the London Bridge Resort at some point. Next to the hotel area, there is a walking path that follows a canal which leads under the old London Bridge and then to Lake Havasu itself. Those of you who have been probably hung around the London Bridge Resort at some point. Next to the hotel area, there is a walking path that follows a canal which leads under the old London Bridge and then to Lake Havasu itself. This canal allows people to park their boats within walking distance to the resort. One night, 3 of my friends and I went for a stroll along this path. During our walk, we heard some shouting, which went along the lines of, "Be cool, be cool. We're leaving, man, just be cool." My group hung back for a bit. After a second, a group of guys came up. We asked them what was going on, and they said there were 2 guys in a boat. They were flashing people in the face with a spotlight, talking crap and pissing them off, then pulling out a pistol when they were about to get their butts kicked. We were referred to the guys in the boat as douchebags from here out. So my group decided that we weren't going to stand for this and came up with a plan. We continued down the pathway to douchebag's boat and played dumb. We asked them what those guys were so scared of. Being the smug, self-satisfied little douches they were, they said, "Those guys wanted to pick a fight with us, so I pulled my gun on them." It was actually an old .38 revolver. At that point, I knew this was going to be easy. You see, one of the members of our group was a girl, a pretty girl wearing a bikini and cut-off jean shorts. She laid on the dumb bimbo card and in no time had them eating out of her hand. She said, "I've never seen a gun before. Is it heavy? Do you have any more?" And those jerks handed her their gun to hold and said, "No, that's the only one." She then handed it to our buddy Jay, who's a 6'4", 280-pound wolf mate. Jay threw that gun close to 250 feet away into the canal, which made a very satisfying thunk when it hit water. Those douchebags were completely speechless. It took them close to 20 seconds just to process what had happened. Finally, one of them spoke and was, "Oh, what the? Why did you do that? You better go get it." We just laughed and I said, "No, we won't. Think about next time you're flashing people with that spotlight." After a few moments of incoherent shouting, one of them tried to get into Jay's face for some stupid reason. He didn't even make it out of his boat and Jay shoved him back into his seat hard enough that it broke. Neither one of the douchebags were very big. Our girl buddy could have taken them. Other buddy Jay told him to go park somewhere else for the night because if we saw them again, we would kick their butts for real. So they pulled off, and when they were out and away from us, they started talking crap again, and we just kept laughing at them. After they were gone, we finished our walk, went back to the hotel, and started partying again. It was a great night. So if any of you make it out that way again, get your snorkel out. There is an old rusted piece of crap pistol at the bottom of the canal by the London Bridge Resort. I'll never forget the day that turned my ordinary life into something straight out of a drama series. It was a regular afternoon and I was driving my usual route through the local school. The kids were chatty, the sun was shining, and everything seemed as normal as it could be. Little did I know chaos was about to unfold right before my eyes. My son, Jamie, who's on the autism spectrum, often rides with me. He likes the routine and it makes him feel secure. He's always been fascinated with the passing scenery, so he usually sits by the window, lost in his own little world. That day, however, things took a turn for the worse when Karen decided to challenge the pace of our daily ride. It happened so fast. 1 minute I was checking the rearview mirror to make sure all the kids were seated, and the next minute, Karen was storming onto the bus like a hurricane. I'd seen her around. She was the kind of parent who hovered a bit too closely and had a reputation for being overly confrontational. But I'd never imagined she'd bring her wrath onto the bus. "Move over, kid. My son wants to sit by the window." She barked at Jamie, who looked up, visibly confused and startled by her aggression. "But I like sitting here. I don't mind sharing, though." Jamie tried to negotiate, his voice trembling slightly. He's always been a gentle soul, not one for confrontations. Karen wasn't having any of it. "I didn't ask if you mind. Move now," she yelled, causing a stir among the other children. They started whispering, sensing the tension rising. And that's when I intervened. "Ma'am, please, there is no need to shout. We can sort this out calmly," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the anger bubbling up inside me. But before I could even unbuckle my seatbelt to stand up, Karen did something unforgivable. She slapped Jamie across the face. Hard. The sound echoed through the bus and time seemed to stop. The other kids gasped and Jamie's face turned red from the impact. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he didn't make a sound. He just looked at me, confused and hurt. Something primal snapped in me at that moment. I've always been a calm person, but seeing my son being attacked triggered a rage I didn't know I had. I lunged towards Karen, grabbing her by the hair and dragged her off my son. I don't condone violence and I've never been in a fight before, but the sight of my son's tear-streaked face blinded me to reason. I pulled Karen off the bus, and in my frenzy I ended up punching her head against the curb. It was a blur of screams, cries, and the other children shouting for help. When I finally came to my senses, Karen was lying on the ground and I realized the magnitude of what I've done. The aftermath was swift and severe. I was fired from my job for my actions, despite my years of dedicated service. Karen, with her bruised ego and equally bruised body, pressed charges against me. And feeling like I had lost everything, I decided to fight back the only way I knew how, legally. I countersued Karen for assaulting Jamie and the school for wrongful termination. It was a long and draining process, filled with legal jargon, tears, and a relentless pursuit of justice. The court cases were intense. Karen tried to play the victim, but the bus's security footage showed the truth. It was hard to watch, but it vindicated Jamie and me. The jury saw the unprovoked aggression Karen exhibited toward the child who merely wanted to sit by the window. In the end, I won both cases. The court ruled in my favor, recognizing the extreme circumstances under which I acted. Karen was found guilty of assault and I was awarded damages from her and the school. It wasn't about the money though. It was about standing up for what's right and protecting my son. Losing my job was hard, but the support from my community was overwhelming. Parents and kids from the school rallied around us, offering kind words and support. And this whole ordeal taught me a lot about myself, my strengths and the lengths I would go to protect my child. I never imagined I'd be at the center of such turmoil, but I learned that sometimes standing up for what's right comes with unexpected consequences. Jamie and I are doing better now. He is still the sweet, window-loving kid he's always been, but there is no resilience in his eyes. As for me, well, I found a new job and I really like it. A while ago, while I was on my break from the retail store that I work at, I was shopping in the electronics store directly next to the store I work at. I was wearing the store uniform, which is a very distinctive red and khaki with a jacket on top, as well as my name tag, which very clearly states what store I work at. Anyways, enter crazy mom and her 4 kids. I heard this piercing whistle from behind me a few times, so I looked over my shoulder because damn, it was loud. This lady is barreling towards me with her kids in tow. As I turned to her to see what all the hustle and whistling was about, she grabbed my wrist and knocked my phone out of my hand. I then looked down and can see glass shards everywhere as the phone is smashed to hell. So I gave her the classic, "What the hell, lady?" To which she responded by hysterically screaming that employees should not be texting while working and that I should be ashamed of keeping her waiting because I was texting. I then turned away and she kicked my ankle as I walked away. I tripped, sprained my ankle, face planted, and nailed my shoulder on a shelving. Her kids started laughing and pointing. About this point was when an employee arrived and was able to help me up and see if I was okay. Now she finally thinks for a second, and a whole new look came over her face as she realized that I don't work at this store in the first place. Then another new look as I told the employee to call the police. She started pleading with me that it was just a mistake and that she was just having a bad day. Long story short, she was arrested on assault charges and eventually had to first replace my phone, second was given 350 hours community service, third I was awarded a decent sum of money, and my personal favorite is that she has to pay for and attend therapy sessions for the next 3 years on account of her rage issues. My parents had this problem with a guy parking a tractor trailer on their land. He lives right across from one of their pecan groves. The grove has well-spaced trees in all neat rows. The grass is mowed super short, the ground is really flat. It looks like an ideal place to pull your rig if you don't know better. The ground is so flat because they use mechanical harvesting. Bumps and grooves can cause the machines to leave pecans laying on the ground. A 2-inch deep groove from a big truck like that can hold thousands of dollars of pecans and well until it's fixed. Oh, and you have to get them up by hand. It's a big deal when someone screws with your livelihood like that. So the guy parks there one time. They get it. He probably doesn't understand he's causing so much trouble. Dad goes down, explains the damage he has done, tell them the grove is private property and not to do it again. The dude agrees and apologizes. Dad goes home and fixes the damage midweek. Next Friday there is a truck again, same spot. Dad, not about to put up with this, calls the sheriff's department. The cop comes and the truck moves. Dad fixes the damage midweek. Next week no truck. 1 week later the truck is back. Repeat complaint for trespassing to the sheriff. The dude claims he forgot. He drives over the road and his Home Depot, where his car is parked to 30 miles away. It's convenient for the dude to forget because he saves his gas and time by driving his employer's rig and parking it on my parents' land. Also, he doesn't get nailed if his cab isn't clean. No other driver gets assigned his truck. There are plain motivations. The dude clearly doesn't forget every time he's home, but this is what he claims to the deputies sent out on the complaints. After 7 times the sheriff department is called, he finally gets a trespassing citation. No fine is levied. He drives his car 2 weeks in a row. The following week, the truck is back. At this point, my dad has fixed this damage so often, he's keeping a tractor and blade on the property so it gets done faster and easier. He calls the sheriff yet again, and the sheriff himself comes out this time. The truck leaves and the sheriff comes to see my dad. Says the enforcement problem is that it is hard to explain to court the harm when pictures hardly show any damage, and the dude always apologizes and moves the truck when deputies come. He says getting the dude for trespassing under those circumstances is going to be tough, but he's on this and will see it through for my parents, but his office is 30 miles away. Not that many deputies to be out patrolling and so on. And then the sheriff, bless his little elected heart, says, but if there were something different like a theft of services going on, few malicious compliance. The next day, signs go up on 80 trees in a row. 8,000 feet, they are 100 feet apart. Semi-parking, $500 an hour. Prepay. Violators will be towed. The dude doesn't pay the signs any mind. The dude does, however, pay the tow truck and deputy quite a bit of mind. He comes running and screaming, waving his arms as they are hooking up. Well, before my dad called to have him towed, everything was documented, including having the sheriff himself drive by and take several pictures of the truck parked with the clearly visible signs. Everything is put on hold while the dude's employer who owns the truck drives out. After 3 hours, dude's boss gives up and writes a check for $7,800 to cover parking and tow truck fees. That actually covered the tow truck, all the repairs, printing the signs, and beer for about a year for my dad's Tuesday poker gathering. Salute. The dude who still lives there does not park in a pecan grove. His past payroll deducted his checks for 2 whole years. So your typical trailer trash redneck family moved into my grandpa's rental house. The father is a loud and easily enraged handyman. His wife almost never seen, and one son is a rapist while the other is a multi-film bag of nuts. Drugs and parties galore. You get the idea. The house, which could fetch $1,400 a month, which is generally a large/nice house in our area, is destroyed over 5 or 6 years for only $600 a month. When he actually pays it, that is. Grandpa during this time is showing all the symptoms of dementia. I would normally never let someone get the better of him like this. So at one point I start working with my father doing upkeep in Grandpa's place. At this point I live in one of my grandpa's houses within walking distance of the one redneck has been living in. So I of course had the great pleasure of being able to tape the multiple eviction notices to their doors when they hadn't paid rent for 6 months. After all of the legal proceedings, it has been 8 months that they haven't paid rent and the sheriff is present as we set their things outside because a judge approved an immediate eviction. It probably helped when they didn't even show up to court to defend themselves. They hadn't been seen for a couple of days, so they were imprisoned for this. Therefore, we were courteous enough to bring in our own guys to carefully move their things out. The lawman there was happy to take every little bit of paraphernalia that was found in the process. Redneck did show up later that night though, so I stood on my porch out of sight and listened as he got out of his car to scream, "This is nonsense!" as loud as he could in full redneck accent. We had already changed locks and literally bolted shut the windows. So they left after collecting some random things and, as expected, Redneck squealed his tires on the way out. They broke in the back door that night but didn't do any other damage, and were already gone the next morning. We notified the police and replaced the door as it was weak anyway. For the full picture, the house is a 2-story, 3-bedroom with 2 full baths, 2 large living rooms, 2 large fireplaces, French doors onto a large deck and a garage as well as a carport in the back. It also came with all of the appliances, some furniture and whatnot. The surrounding area is fields and woods, with a really nice view out of the bay windows. My dad built this house with his own hands in the 70s, and I have been in the house before they moved in. So it was genuinely sad to see the place like it was. When it's all done and over with, they are moved out, and my dad ends up having to put a little over $30,000 into the house to make it livable again. It took 3 months of work, and even after that, a plumber and an electrician had to go and fix several problems that were discovered with tests and use. New renters get moved in as soon as possible. All is good and well, but then one day, on my way to work, I see the Redneck's family car parked at the end of the lane. It's an old beater with a bumper and driver door both being different colors from the rest of the car. So, it's hard to mistake. Our family-owned business is where he would usually pay rent, and I'm only at work for about an hour when I'm told that I have a phone call on hold. I take the line and he doesn't hesitate to start in his hard-to-understand lilt. "Hey, this is Redneck. My car needs fixed, and I left it in a lane. Can it stay there for a few days?" I'm grinning and I almost giggle after I've thought it over for a second. "Sure, I don't mind." He hangs up just like that, and I don't stop smiling as I start to look at local tow companies on the internet. I found the one with the highest rates at the responsibility of the car's owner, and I gave them a call. They even charged hourly for the time their driver was on a road, so I was glad the place was a good while away. After waiting only half an hour after work, the two showed up, and I was happy to watch as he got the car hooked up. Once he got done, I pointed him to the paved area where he could turn around, and then he was gone. It was on the 4th day that I got a phone call from Redneck's little wife, and I'm certain that he was staring at her the whole time as she politely asked where the car had been sent. I think someone had it towed. I tell her with a reassurance that I will call her back as soon as I find out who towed it, and where. That was on Friday. So guess who didn't hear from me until Monday? She answered and I told her, hey, I found out it was towing company. Being as polite as ever, she thanked me and the line went dead. So that was 4 business days and 2 weekend days before they got to the car, as I imagine they went to get it as soon as they found out. With the rates from their website, I figured out that their bill should have been at least $700. There is no way that these people would have that much money, as none of them were employed. Their only money came from the 2 parents who got Social Security somehow, despite only being in their 40s/early 50s. That was a year ago, and I've never seen that car on a local street since. To this day, I smile just thinking about it. Not exactly a store, but still relevant. So this happened about 5 years ago when my grandfather passed. After the funeral, there was a buffet and a reception at a local restaurant. I had finished my food and so I was heading up to the window where the kitchen was, as I saw some waiters bussing dirty dishes to the window, so I figured it would be helpful if I just took my plate there. As I'm walking over, a woman steps in front of me and blocks my path. She quickly dumps several plates on my pile and very confidently says, "Is it helpful if I just hand you all of our plates?" The woman was my uncle's latest girlfriend. I calmly replied, I don't work here, but I can run these to the kitchen for you, I guess. I was trying to be polite. She gave me a puzzled look and asked, "Then what are you doing at this reception?" I paused for a moment, baffled that she asked me why I was at my own grandpa's funeral. I didn't respond and just walked away. She sits back down next to my uncle and points to me and gives me a nasty look as she's talking to my uncle, presumably asking him who I was. He came up to me a few minutes later and apologized that she had assumed I worked here and just threw a bunch of dishes at me. I saw her outside as we were leaving the restaurant. She came up to me again and said, "That was very rude of you to walk away from someone who's talking to you, young man." I was about 15-ish at the time, so I told her, "It's ruder to give someone else your dirty dishes, especially when that someone just lost their grandfather. But I guess no one ever taught you any manners," I said as I was climbing into my mom's van. I never saw her again. My uncle dumped her basically right after that. Let me tell you about the time my high school senior class decided to pull off the most legendary anti-prank in the history of our school. Now you've got to understand our high school was pretty strict about pranks. The class before us went a bit too far, and the school administration was determined to prevent a repeat performance. They made it crystal clear, no senior pranks or else. Threats of suspension, banning from graduation ceremonies, and the works. But you know, telling a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds not to do something is pretty much like waving a red flag at a ball. So the creative minds of our class got to thinking, what if we did something so harmless, so ridiculously benign that the school couldn't possibly punish us for it? And thus, the idea of the anti-prank was born. Word spread like wildfire. We had meetings in hushed tones, secret group chats buzzing at all hours. Everyone was in. Monday morning rolled around and the snow began. Imagine this. A school of approximately 2,600 students was our senior class, making up about 650 of those. Now picture hundreds of seniors walking into school, each of us carrying a single banana. To class, to the cafeteria, even to gym. Those bananas were our constant companions. The looks on the teachers' and assistant principals' faces were priceless. Confusion, concern, a growing sense of unease. By lunchtime, the school couldn't take it anymore. An announcement blared over the PA system, demanding all bananas be eaten or thrown away immediately, or they will be confiscated. By the end of the day, not a banana was in sight, but the buzz had only just begun. Tuesday was when we upped the ante. The weapon of choice? A gallon jug of water. Each senior walked into school clutching their jug like a lifeline. The reaction was immediate and even more intense than the day before. Warnings were issued, threats made, and soon enough, the great jug confiscation began. But we were ready this time. We hid our jugs in backpacks, tucked into bathrooms, and took the long way around to avoid the jug patrols. The school was in a frenzy, and we were loving every minute of it. But we didn't stop there. Oh no, we took to social media like generals commanding an army. Tweets, posts, stories, we tagged everyone from local news stations to celebrities, crying out about our suffering under high school drought too. We tagged everyone from local news stations to celebrities, crying out about our suffering under high school drought 2K XX hashtag. The narrative was too juicy to ignore, but before we knew it, our little stunt had attracted real media attention. Reporters showed up, cameras in hand, ready to uncover the truth behind the dehydration crisis at our school. The administration was livid, of course. Meetings were called, lectures were given, but what could they do? We hadn't broken a single rule. We were just a bunch of kids carrying bananas one day, and water jugs the next. The final tally? No one was suspended. No one banned from graduation. The school had no choice but to laugh it off eventually. That year, our senior class didn't just leave behind memories, we left behind a legacy. We showed that you could push boundaries, challenge authority, and still come out on top, all without causing any real trouble. It was a perfect senior prank, a true testament to the power of creativity, unity, and a good sense of humor. As for the school, well, I like to think we taught them a valuable lesson too. Sometimes the best way to deal with a bunch of determined teenagers is to just let them have their fun, as long as it's all in good spirits.